Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, April 22nd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 131 days, the game against Michigan in 222 days. When we wrapped up at the end of last week, I thought certainly we will have more transfer portal news, undoubtedly for the football program at some point over the weekend. We did not. However, there was transfer portal news for the Ohio State basketball team. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Going to be joined by Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. And Tony, after the end of the season, there was a group of Ohio State players that hit the portal and announced they were leaving. There was a group of Ohio State players that announced, okay, I'm coming back. And Felix Okpara had initially put his name in the I'm coming back category. Of course, he did that on April 1st. So perhaps this was just a really elaborate April Fool's Day prank, because now Felix Okpara on Sunday announced, in fact, he would be entering the transfer portal.
Yeah, and maybe the saddest thing in all of this is that the idea that I can't believe players have to announce that they're coming back has now been converted to, yeah, they've announced it, but what does it mean? You know, are they really coming back? I know they've said they have, and they've come to an agreement with the collective, but we won't really know until the window is closed. And so, that whole chapter of, hey, they've announced is now out the window. So, yeah, Felix Okpara announces he's on his way somewhere else, and boy, it sure seems like a coincidence based on what has happened recently and what they've brought in. But yeah, you think it's all done. You think you got your center, you've got your point guard, you've got a forward in Devin Royal, and then now you can start building around them, and you start doing that, and then one of them leaves. And so it's, I guess, as we say, an interesting time to be alive.
It definitely is. And Okpara last year was, I think, 6.6 points and 6.4 boards per game. And, he was not someone they were running the whole offense through by any means, but was one of those players that was consistently growing. And every year felt like he was a more effective and more efficient player than he had been in previous years. And you were kind of looking forward to, okay, let's see what the next year looks like, because it feels like he was becoming a bigger and bigger part of the team. So to lose him, this is definitely a little bit of a blow for them, because that is not, size like that is not the easiest thing to just conjure unless you were Matt Painter and you can just sort of, I don't know, like just summon these people out of thin air, these 7'4" guys. So we'll see what the Buckeyes do. They did add some height earlier in the month between the time that Okpara announced that he'd be coming back and now when Okpara announced he was leaving. There was the addition of center Aaron Bradshaw out of Kentucky. Talked about him on a show couple weeks ago. And, it feels like it's probably not entirely a coincidence that Bradshaw's arrival happened between Okpara saying, I'm definitely staying, and now I'm definitely leaving. Feels like that's probably not entirely a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't think it can be. And I'm sure there may be other reasons, but when you have essentially a 7-footer on the roster and you bring in another 7-footer, it's one of those things where I don't think this town is big enough for the both of us. And I don't think this paint is big enough for the both of us. And they talked about, there's going to be some high-low action, some things like that. And I don't think I don't think Felix Okpara liked the addition. That's my sense of things. And so when you still have your options open, I just wonder how much of this does this feel like a personal affront where how dare you move somebody into my spot when I'm here? And I agree. He has been getting better each year. And I think we've seen that offensive development get better. The defensive stuff is continuing to get better, but like as a shot blocker, he's pretty elite. And so when you bring somebody else in and he put Zed Key on the bench essentially this year. So you would think like, hey, I've established myself. I am a key piece, and the collective signs him as such. And then you go out and, you see somebody else come in and you're thinking, well, maybe now my minutes aren't going to be as easy as I thought. Maybe I should go somewhere else. And, you see like what happened with Jaden Ledee goes somewhere else, and he does very, very well for San Diego State. So, just the nature of the game now, I guess, but yeah, and it was a guy, Felix Okpara, who we'd heard that was looking as a possibility to transfer after the season, maybe had a destination, something of that nature. And so if if you're Ohio State and like maybe there's a half a foot out the door, how confident are you that it won't be a situation next year as well? But then also, how confident are you that this is every single year is every single player is on a 1-year deal? Felix Okpara's latest deal was a 1-week deal, a 1-month deal. And now, it's the transient nature of the sport, I guess.
It does feel like this has just become the new norm. And, the old line, you can't tell the players without a scorecard. It kind of feels like that. It feels like we go into Ohio State basketball media day every year and it's like, all right, I recognize 4 of these guys without having to really think about it. And the roster just turns over so much every year. And it's not really just an Ohio State thing. This is not a uniquely Ohio State issue. Just in case you are scoring at home, the portal additions this year, center Aaron Bradshaw out of Kentucky, guard Michi Johnson out of South Carolina, and previously also from Ohio State, and forward Micah Parrish, who was a teammate of Jaden Ledee at San Diego State last year. The 5 portal departures so far this year, Felix Okpara obviously has not landed anywhere yet. Forward Zed Key, he is committed to Dayton, so he will be a Flyer next year. Scotty Middleton, still out on the market. Roddy Gale, still out on the market. There's been a lot of smoke linking him to Michigan. Wouldn't that be a fun storyline to watch next year? And then guard Bowen Hardman. And those are not including the guys who just used up their eligibility. Jamison Battle, for example, gone. He's done. It feels like, Tony, it is just sort of the norm now in college basketball that half of the roster turns over. And I don't think that's just an Ohio State thing. It just feels like between guys leaving and guys transferring and so many guys entering the portal, it just feels like every year you're not starting quite from scratch, but you're starting from closer to scratch than you ever have before.
Yeah, for sure. And it feels like programs like in Oakland or these mid-majors are almost become JUCOs now. You get 2 years maybe out of a player before they go up to the main level of college sports. And if I mean, I would hate to feel terrible for some of these mid-major coaches to develop somebody for 2, 3, 4 years and then lose them when you're finally going to get the best out of them and they go on and play for somewhere else. And then at a place like Ohio State, you develop somebody and you have to make sure you can keep them or else somebody else is going to reap the benefits of that. But also, you know what? Somebody else can go develop a player for you and then you can go grab them. So I guess all is fair is in love in the transfer portal. But yeah, this is, you go in knowing like, well, this is our team this year and our team next year is going to look awfully different. And the team after that's going to look awfully different. There's no longer a thing where you can follow this class and watch them grow. Like, oh, they brought in 5 guys. This is the foundation of the future is right here. Cause you bring in the one class and you have them look at each other and look to your left, look to your right. Only 2 of you will be here next year. And that's sort of the way things are going right now.
It does feel a little bit like that, which is, it's bizarre to see college basketball changing the way it has. So the Buckeyes as of right now, have 2 roster spots left. We'll see if they bring anyone in the transfer portal or have anyone else leave in the transfer portal. But as of right now, 2 roster spots left for the upcoming season. Feels to me like they, you probably have to replace Okpara's size. I mean, just absolute bare minimum, get a big, large power forward, if not a center. You might not be able to conjure a 7-footer out of the portal at this point, but what do you see them trying to do with those last 2 spots?
Yeah, I mean, you got Bradshaw in the post, and you probably want somebody else there. I still think they need shooting. They really don't have any right now. You bring in, you mentioned Micah Parrish, who is like a 6'6" wing who can play some defense, kind of replaces maybe the Scotty Middleton thing, but is not the shooter that Scotty Middleton is. Can he become that? You would hope for Ohio State's sake, but you lose some offense, and I still think they need a shooter, a wing shooter that can catch and shoot, stretch the defense, because right now, they're missing some of that. And so can you get that? Can you get a power forward, somebody in the paint that can score? This is a very different looking team than what you lost, and losing guys like Roddy Gale and Scotty Middleton, who get better each year and could become something, perhaps NBA potential, and to lose those guys, you've got to replace them with somebody that can score. And, I don't know how much to expect from Micah Parrish Next year's a 9-point scorer. This past year at San Diego State, can he do that at Ohio State? Maybe he might have to.
Well, that'll be we'll be following that for you, as well as all the other storylines surrounding Jake Diebler's first full season as the Ohio State basketball coach. But of course, we'll also be following a lot of football news as well. Tony and Mark and Kevin were out scouting some future Buckeyes and potential future Buckeyes over the weekend. We're going to be talking about that on tomorrow's show. I had a grand plan for that to be today's show, but this news happened first, so we're doing this now, and we'll talk about the Ohio State quarterback of the future and other possible quarterbacks of the future on tomorrow's show. Then we got plenty more coming up later this week. Lots of interesting recruiting news, more stuff coming at the end of, recapping of spring football, things we learned during spring football, potential portal news coming out of spring football, all that coming up later this week on Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, on the Buckeye Weekly podcast, and of course, at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. We got our whole team of X's and O's gurus making you a smarter football fan, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.